Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the king of podcasts.
Here we go, episode 235 of the Broadcasters Podcast. And today on the program, or tonight as I record this, we're going to talk about the ongoing issues with musicians and the money they're trying to make in the music industry alone, where there's a whole lot happening with musicians trying to do what they can, legacy musicians trying to make the most they can off of their music, and the different pipelines they have to go through because the traditional record label route is becoming obsolete. So now musicians, through TikTok, through streaming through Spotify or Pandora or Apple, all these other places they're trying to make their revenue from, whether they're independent artists or they're going through a record label, hoping that the record labels will go ahead and get their music pushed out, is one of the things they're worrying about. Not to mention all the issues going on with artists that have to go on tour, have to go and find ways for merchandise, NFTs, all these different routes of trying to make ends meet and try to become the musicians that are rich rock stars. Like the whole dream comes off, right? The whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Well, for where things are in the mainstream of music, you know, some of the routes that you could have had to help amplify your music and get it out there, namely radio, has not been out there for you. Instead, radio is having a fight with satellite radio now as two industries altogether. SiriusXM, we'll talk about a little bit later on, decided to go ahead and take shots at trying to get more of an audience to their platform and tell them turn off the AM FM radio. And radio, they don't really have a good argument as to why people should go ahead and take the subscription route, but they're not talking about it. But it's two antiquated formats fighting with each other, missing the big picture of what they should be doing, where music should leverage them out. Now, talk radio, they can do what they do have now in the meantime and work with podcasting and find ways to leverage out, much like NPR has done, to, you know, equalize efforts on making money on multiple fronts, which radio has done such a bad job in the first place of using their streaming services, trying to promote smart speakers to get people to listen to music, because it's the commercial content is boring, it's antiquated, it's rough, it's not listenable. The jocks you have on are just basically data entry types that are not doing much of anything special for their content unless they get to do something on social media, but that defeats the purpose of being with social media to complement what you're supposed to be doing on the air. When you're actually doing more on social media than you are doing on the air, it doesn't make sense. So there's that part. But there's a whole lot to go through tonight, because there's also the routes of being able to make money from movies and television, which we've seen artists doing so far, and also through social media, different ways of virality, which we've talked about a lot on the program, going back to when I talked about Kate Bush and Running Up That Hill, or when I talked about the movie Elvis with Austin Butler, or Bohemian Rhapsody, or, you know, Rocket Man about Elton John with Taron Egerton. All those movies that came out that are focusing on music, that bring certain legacy artists back to light, and how certain things will go viral, and then all of a sudden, you know, you have things that all of a sudden become legacy, and we see, oh wow, music comes back to the forefront again. We've seen several examples in the last 2 years of songs that all of a sudden music just comes back into the top of the charts virally. Nirvana had a song earlier this year that made it back into the Hot 100. Master of Puppets made it to number 43 in the Billboard Hot 100 this week, thanks to Stranger Things. You have Top Gun and the one song from One Republic, and I forget the name of the song right now off the top of my head. So you got that song that's performing pretty well, and that's a result of what's going on with the music that's out there for them. I Ain't Worried. There we go. Top Gun Maverick, which performed better because of the whole volleyball scene and where it was placed in the movie compared to Hold My Hand from Lady Gaga, which did not perform well at all. But then you remember Fleetwood Mac, who celebrates 50 years as a group this year. And now they became relevant again after just seeing the one Mexican guy on a skateboard drinking Ocean Spray. I mean, things like that, right? And all of a sudden, things just come back in the light, and certain songs just become new again. And Variety actually just put out a great article about that today. Mike Wass writes about viral revivals from Kate Bush to Tom Odell inside the business of oldies as new hit songs. Let's get into what he says about this. So as we know, Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill still remains a top 10 song on the Billboard Hot 100 charts, which it never was in its original run in 1985. Got up to number 6 on Billboard's Hot 100 chart for the week ending June 30th, 37 years after. Then you have other songs that came in where, and there's the thing too, which is really weird. Okay, so Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, and then the song Another Love by Tom Odell. That song's from 2012. I didn't even know that. But that song, for whatever reason, made it onto the limelight again. And I've seen that song chart again. In the UK, it's constantly charted and also charted on Spotify in their top 100. And there's actually a remix of that song that recently just came to light of Another Love. Is it Tiesto? I forget who did the remix. But it's great. It's a really great song. I didn't realize how good that was, and I didn't know about the song itself until I heard about it, and I was like, all of a sudden, I thought it was a new song. You could have told me it was from 2022, and I wouldn't know the difference. Tom Odell, Another Love. Check that out for yourselves. Yes, Tiesto did Another Love, a remix from May of this year. Great remix. I would definitely recommend you go and check that out for yourselves. Now, moving along, for Kate Bush, Warner Records couldn't ignore 85 million global streams this week alone that they had to resurface Running Up That Hill to radio. And without a sync on a cultural juggernaut like Stranger Things to open doors, artists and their teams are tackling this increasingly common scenario in a variety of different ways. They approach radio stations and DSPs, which I don't know what those are, releasing new videos in alternate versions. The goal is to extend the viral moment and hopefully make an impact across the wider music ecosystem. So Another Love was a breakup anthem that got hyper-viral on TikTok in 2022. And the ballad was used to soundtrack emotional creates about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The song started charting globally, more than 900 million streams on Spotify alone. And breaking the song has still been tricky because it's on Spotify as a global chart. It still is doing well, but it never did make it in the US for whatever reason. But that's just because it's a Brit song. It's a British artist. It doesn't hit that well. Plus, the Another Love song never hit the top 40 of the official chart at this point. It's on the bottom rung of the official chart at this point. So the record labels are kind of in a quandary about this. And this is what's being said about his co-manager, Tom Odell's co-manager, Joe Riccitelli, He's former co-president of RCA Records. Tom was signed to Columbia Records and licensed to RCA in the U.S. The song is now considered a legacy, so it's a catalog song. It's hard to get the label involved because it's not frontline music. Catalog divisions are not inherently built to work current singles. They're just not made that way. So because the song is older and the song just might be revived, they can't get it serviced to radio. But for Kate Bush, it took about a good 6-7 weeks to get that song serviced to radio after it hit top 10 in the U.S. and number 1 at this moment. It's still, it just got unseated for number 1 after 2 weeks on the official chart in the United Kingdom for LF System's Afraid to Feel, which is another great song, by the way. Great dance hit. Summer banger. Now, Riccitelli took radio promotion into his own hands. He says, I have to do it literally station by station, programmer by programmer, and try to get the one of them to take the shot on the song. If the artist isn't even signed into the ecosystem anymore, does it really make sense to go out there and spend the money on it? Also remember, and I've said this many times on this program, the record labels all cut radio promotion and put those divisions towards streaming. So that other part of radio promotion that could be tackling this for Mr. Riccitelli right here, they don't have the departments for it because the staff has been moved to streaming. So streaming's not the problem, but if they want to get radio involved, they have to go one by one. And remember, this guy is talking to station by station. The program directors are going to do anything. The music directors can't do much when they do those regular music calls. What are they going to do? Well, I have to run it up the flagpole to the regional programming director. It's their corporate betters that are the ones that are going to say, oh, we'll give them a chance. Like, it's going to still take a while for Kate Bush to have that song resurface the radio and then get a chance to move across. Because now, the only reason that people will go to radio is because it's a secondary market. Radio, I said this before on a previous show, and let me just make this point again, because it really is the same idea. Radio is a secondary market. And I said this before on a previous episode. If you just look back at what's been going on with them, it was that way. And I remember there was a show that I actually did say that radio is a flea market. How corporate radio is the flea market for music. And this goes back to March of 2021 when I did that episode. It's funny that I still have that here. And I said that. Episode 167. So go take a listen to that. You'll remember me talking about this and specifically saying that. Because that's where it is. And now it's very front and center. How hard is it for a radio programmer to take a song like this? That's a bona fide hit. Listen, it's a song you must have heard in the last 37 years for when it comes to Kate Bush, in the last 10 years when it comes to Tom Odell. Now, here's another thing that's going on. There's a song from Ellie Duhay. They found themselves in a similar situation with a 2020 synth pop anthem called Middle of the Night. Now, this song I know on the Billboard charts, it's been bubbling under the top, in the bubbling under charts, the top 25. So if it was on the Hot 100, it's like just outside the top 100 and like around like number like 105 or 110. So it's on the bubbling under, and the song broke into the top 20 of Spotify's global chart after going nuclear on TikTok. And then the song's recent release, they decided to self-fund a promo campaign where the label showed reluctance. After all, Duhay had parted ways with RC the week it was released. So because the artist is no longer there, the record label doesn't want to take advantage. Listen, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, how many record labels do we know out there that are continuously putting out eponymous albums from Pop Smoke and Juice WRLD and XXXTentacion well after their deaths? Like, you know, if somebody leaves, it's still your content. You own the rights to it. You're not going to promote it? Are you not going to go and stick it to the artist? What, are they going to make royalties off of that? But you're going to make more off of it yourselves. It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, Middle of the Night did get put on Spotify's today's top hits playlist. And so streaming, they were able to go do the right thing when it came to Jay Hill, CEO and founder of Not Fit for Society, and his co-founder Tabari Francis, that decided to invest their own money on the record. Found a TikTok team, found influencers, hired people, reached out to Spotify and Apple Music. And Middle of the Night did make it to the today's top hits playlist. Man, I'm just like going like Porky Pig on there with the stutters, but I'm not going to cut it out. Then the executives brought the song to pop radio. They got it serviced. We tried to get airplay, but we decided it didn't really make sense for the situation. It amassed almost 400 million Spotify streams, charting in countries as diverse as India, Australia, Malaysia, France, and the UK. And no signs of slowing down. So the song is a fringe song just outside of the Billboard Hot 100. And we don't know if that song's going to make it through. And I've heard the song. It's not bad. It's just, you know, it's an anthem song. And it's not one of those songs I'm really so much into myself. And it's an artist I've never heard of until now. But the record labels are being creative and they're getting it. They're trying to find ways to kind of make something off of it. So there's a New York-based duo called Kafune. They had a 2019 single called Tech It, and in early 2022 attracted the attention of Elektra Records. The band signed to the label, and the indie pop track is now being actively worked at radio. And there's a moment on TikTok that the label's job is to extend that moment. And Johnny Minardi, who's vice president of A&R at Elektra, concurs that we listened to what was happening on TikTok. Knowing the power of alternate edits on the platform, the band got to work on music sped up and the ever so popular slowed plus reverb versions. So Minardi kept an eye on the bigger picture and says, we immediately took agents very seriously and wanted to make sure we transferred the excitement to real fans and touring. So some bands don't like releasing multiple versions. Well, if you're BTS, they put out multiple versions just to keep the song being sold, just to make that point. Oh, digital service provider is what they mean by DSP. So that's iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, Tidal, YouTube Music, and all those. So if you wanted to know what that was, I had to go back and look at that myself. So, like I said, BTS is more than happy, and I've talked about chart manipulation just because of that. Go look at my episode on there. I'll tell you that one as well. Hold on a second, because I know where that episode was. And I talked about the chart manipulation that BTS did at the time with their music in the same vein. And that was episode 189, BTS confronting chart manipulation chatter. Take a look for that episode, and you'll see what they did, where they put out multiple versions of bundles and bundles and bundles of their music to keep getting it sold so that the BTS army could keep the song Butter at number 1 on the charts as a single. And of course, it got pushed to radio. But even BTS had trouble getting to radio in the first place. Remember that, too. They put some other artists out there as well talking about the same thing. And there's another song I didn't realize was also an older hit. The Walters, a Chicago indie outfit, has a 2014 hit called I Love You So. That song did chart, and pretty high, as a matter of fact, this year. I didn't even know that was an 8-year-old song. That's kind of really common right now. There's a lot of songs that come up and I don't realize they're old. So Tom Odell, that song's a 2012 song. And then this other song. And remember, there's been other artists that have done the same thing where we hear songs all of a sudden become viral again, which has talked about over and over new music discovery. And I've said that over and over on this program. Remember that. There's only so many times I can repeat the fact of the matter is that this keeps happening. And new music discovery, I talked about it with Shavo Odagian of 22 Red, of System of a Down. I talked about that. I talked about that on episodes 230 and 233 about new music discovery and how it's being done for social media and streaming because the audience is there. That's where the listeners are, not radio. Radio curates the music for them, but giving the freedom of that music to the audience through social media and through the digital service providers. Radio needs to be listening to what the audience is listening to and piggyback on the most popular songs that make it onto the Billboard Hot 100 chart. But they don't. And I can, keep saying that until I'm blue in the face. They're just not going to do it. So some songs are no longer active records. So they become legacy and they become catalog. And because they become catalog, then they're not as easily adept to be put onto radio service. So they can be put out as songs once again. Because remember, you're trying to put songs that are legacy records that were never put on the radio in its initial run. And they're saying it's tougher for radio to take these songs and put them on now? That amazes me. It doesn't make any sense. If a song charts, no matter how long it took to get there, then let's post it. Let's make it happen. Because it's easy for a radio station to take some song that was already put out there, like a Promiscuous by Nelly Furtado, or, pick anything. They can do things where they could just take some song that was popular before and they play it on the radio and they just recirculate the song once again, just pump up the rotation for it for a little while and take it away, which is easy for them. But even songs that are 2, 10, 20, 30 years old, they're not willing to play. They're treating them like it's new music. And it's like, what's wrong with you? It doesn't make any sense. But that's what happens here. I don't get it. They have the artists they want to work out and work with. That's their whole point. So let's get into Stranger Things and the phenomenon that it was. Like I said earlier on the show, Master of Puppets, Metallica, from their 1986 album, has made it into the top 40, or almost broke the top 40 this week as a result of the streaming. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised because of what I just said. Master of Puppets was a song that was popular on rock radio in the 80s. So for this song to be brought back up to classic rock would be easy. A basic no-brainer. Just saying. So The Guardian talks about this and is pretty extensive about it. The impact of Running Up That Hill being used in Stranger Things was so great and so unprecedented that even Kate Bush was taken aback. In a rare interview with BBC Radio 4's Women's Hour, The song's placement in the Netflix show gave Bush her first UK number one in 44 years. Mind you, I said this before. Kate Bush hit number one with her first single, Wuthering Heights, in 1978. And hit number one again in 2022. The longest stretch for a woman, I believe, to have a number one song, that much of a distance between number one songs. So, Jonathan Palmer, who's with the record label and music publishers BMG, has called this now the Stranger Things effect. Now, Palmer is BMG's Senior Vice President of Creative Synchronization. BMG, by the way, the fourth largest music publisher in the world. Music industry terminology for someone who looks after syncs where a song, often a classic, is primed for rediscovery by a younger generation, is placed into a TV show, film, advert, video game, or movie trailer. That's how the song Something in the Way by Nirvana broke the Hot 100 on Billboard this year because the song was featured in the Batman movie earlier this year. Or you could think about the 70s soft rock music that keeps getting put into the Guardians of the Galaxy series. And because of Stranger Things, these syncs are becoming part of the music industry more than ever. Now, running up that hill, Palmer says it's a bit of a unicorn, but Bush is not a total outlier. Because now we're seeing Metallica's Master of Puppets from 1986 also doing the same thing. Since being used in the Stranger Things finale and Eddie Munson playing it up in the upside down to knock off all those bat-looking kind of creatures. The proliferation of streaming platforms such as Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime Video is unlocking enormous new opportunities for music sync, especially for catalog titles like Running Up That Hill. And today's priority platforms for sync teams and music supervisors are for two reasons: enormous reach and enormous budgets. So they talk more about syncs in the article. And what they're saying about this is that record company marketing activity can be planned and coordinated around a major sync, and streaming services, or DSPs, such as Spotify and Apple Music, are lobbied to get behind a track. Notice they're not talking about radio. Now, BBC might be involved when it comes to new music in the UK, but let's be honest here. Terrestrial radio in the US, AM/FM radio in the US? No, not at all. So now, the new wild card is TikTok. It's something record companies cannot anticipate or manipulate. Tom Gallagher, who's Senior Director of Digital Marketing at Rhino UK, part of Warner Music Group, he says that if you look at TikTok, the hashtag Running Up That Hill hashtag has got almost 1 billion views, and there have been over 2 million creations using the sound. And particular music eras are currently hot in TV shows. With Stranger Things, it's the 1980s. And then when music is in vogue, the sync fees rise accordingly. So it's going to be expensive to clear. And that's partly reflecting the song catalogs that are being swept up by companies like Hipgnosis, BMG, Universal Music Group, Sony Music Entertainment, WMG, and Primary Wave, all music publishers. They're buying the catalogs of all these legacy libraries to reuse. They're encouraging artists to interpolate those songs to make more money off of those and to have them repurposed for syncs, as they're talking about here. Those companies can highlight the success of the sync departments when buying a catalog, that they can proactively land syncs, what are called procured syncs, rather than merely approving a sync request when it falls into their lap. Instead of somebody wants to use a song and they have to go to this music publisher to get clearance, you're going to have these music publishers encouraging and pushing and persuading certain media outlets to use your songs for something. So keep that in mind. And the catalog of one act cannot be reduced to 1 or 2 tracks. So sync teams are therefore actively working less obvious music one level down the second-tier copyrights. So maybe somebody might get a request for a specific track, but then offer an alternative that the show's creators never thought of. For example, there's Little Sims's Picture Perfect for Sarah Gavron's drama Rocks instead of the much pricier and more obvious God's Plan by Drake. So going with the hidden gem because it's unique, and you're always trying to look for those in those catalogs, the ones that are not going to be astronomical. So yeah, then you have the idea of like, well, this song's going to cost a lot for you, but maybe this song works for you instead. That's the idea of what they're talking about here. So then what's the thing that they talk about here is if you get lucky and you get something from a TV show to sync an old record that gets viral from streaming, and then it goes to music streaming services and TikTok, is something that cannot be orchestrated or only capitalized upon. For the best plans of these sync departments, it's often less about strategy and more about serendipity. So that's what these publishers and these music labels, the betters of all these musicians and all the legacy of their music, unless they own their masters, which is why there's more importance than ever for certain artists to own their masters. You know, when you think about Kate Bush, you think about Beyonce, you think about, you know, various artists that own their masters, own their craft. They have all the, you know, like Taylor Swift in the same vein. We've heard all the stories of this here and the importance of trying to get things set up so that everybody's getting paid. The publishers want to get so much, but the musicians also, they need to do what they have to do to make sure they're getting paid as well. Getting paid more, as a matter of fact. Well, they know that the record labels are not going to give them that much. I had one other story I was going to bring up for Music Business Worldwide about the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and then the fact that Queen made last year $53 million in annual revenues because of the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, and people all of a sudden wanting to get back and listen to Queen again. Like, it was interesting how all the songs for Queen made it back onto the charts again after all was said and done, because there were a lot of great hits that got pushed out. And of course, radio was out there to help them out, and the publishers could do what they could do. So, you know, they had a way to go and do a lot of things. But one story came in here from Music Business Worldwide that was really interesting about TikTok. They had somebody ask a very poignant question. The question is, when will TikTok start paying the music industry properly? And it has to trickle down to the musicians some way, somehow. So Music Business Worldwide suggests that TikTok's deals with rights holders are currently buyouts rather than revenue share deals. So the platform pays a lump sum upfront to license music for a set period, rather than paying a revenue share based on each artist's or label's popularity on its platform. Right. Like, I think about WWE when they do wrestling, or wrestling companies, when they have to go and pay for the rights to a song, they license it out for a particular amount of time for a particular buyout, instead of doing a revenue share where they hold on to the song in perpetuity. They can use it for as long as they want, depending on. Now, TikTok's revenues are expected to triple to $12 billion in 2022. And the concern are growing amongst music companies that TikTok could soon be too big and too powerful to force into an agreement that it sees pays music rights holders properly. And one of the people they talked to here is the founder of Music Business Worldwide, Tim Ingham, who talked about on a recent podcast called Talking Trends. He explains that the music industry, quote, is growing increasingly worried that it's about the star in a movie we've seen play out time and time again when it comes to music's relationship with tech and media giants. That movie is about a tech or media giant, you've guessed it, building its business off the back of artists without paying those artists what they deserved. So TikTok has to be part of the royalties conversation, or the revenue share conversation. Well, we haven't heard anything talked about it yet. And he says here that soon TikTok is going to be too big and too powerful for us to force it into a revenue share deal. The last time we let a company of this size and power run away with things without paying us properly was MTV. And MTV is no longer. But that's also where it's the W do, you W don't, because you think about what they could do to make that happen, and then think about, well, what's going to happen if they decide to go this route? Tim Ingham talks about this and says here, TikTok does not currently pay out to record companies and artists the same way that Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube does. Well, but remember, TikTok is not playing the full music. They are playing some music that's out there full length, usually some older artists. I never see a lot of the newer ones, but if songs go viral, it's because they hear a clip. So are you going to make them pay for people listening to the clip? Because the music labels, the record labels, if they're going to work with TikTok, then they need to make it where the record labels are putting full-length videos on the platforms of the FYP for people to listen to, if they want to try to do that. So he says one person I spoke to called them buyouts because TikTok is effectively buying out music licenses every year or two. Now, once these so-called buyout checks have been banked, it grants TikTok a free license to use these music companies' music for the duration of whatever their agreed period is. and then how TikTok users then use that music, how many videos they use creating it, how many times those videos are played by the TikTok audience, all that is irrelevant. Music rights holders have their checks and TikTok has its music. It's a very simple agreement, he says. A major record company, for example, gets this big lump of money. TikTok knows it doesn't have to spend any more music in the agreed period, and that's the end of that. But there's flaws in the system, especially when you talk about a revenue share model, which is what you see on YouTube, that every time a song is played, that play generates money from advertising or a paying subscriber. An agreed portion of the money generated goes back to the rights holder. And so you end up in the situation where the more money YouTube makes, the more money the music industry makes, and the growth of that money is proportionate, which is why music videos are still extremely important today as a model to continue to amplify new music, or older music for that matter, and to be able to go and get that out there, that visual component, because people seeing the visual component of this particular song because of what MTV's done to us. Watching a music video that complements the song is a great compliment. It's another great form of content creation, and it's another great way of making some monetization off that video, which you've seen many artists get to do off of that. So if YouTube makes more money from videos with music in them, the music industry makes more from those same videos. And because YouTube has a content ID system identifying user-generated content that contains music, then they give music right holders the opportunity to partake in the monetization of those videos. So here's what they're saying about this. And for musicians out there, pay attention. Imagine you're an artist and your piece of music blows up with millions of plays on TikTok. Those plays, technically speaking, are not monetized. TikTok paid your label or distributor a flat fee to host that music for a set period. It did not agree that every time the music got played, you would get paid. What you earned from the initial check, well, that is a discretion of your distributor or record company. And that's not the primary reason I'm hearing for the music industry to be increasingly concerned about TikTok, is because ByteDance is seeking revenues absolutely explode right now. And the musicians and the artists that are putting this music out here to help complement these TikTok videos are not getting paid for it. But yet, ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, is making $12 million this year off of what they did. Is that right? I said 12 million or 12 billion? 12 billion, excuse me, 12 billion with a B. Now, as for Bloomberg, they put a story out about TikTok that they generated in 2021, $4 billion in the U.S., mostly from advertising. And the eMarketer predicts that TikTok will generate $12 billion primarily from advertising this year in total. Now, we have to think about this too. The fact that TikTok in February expanded the maximum length of the videos to 10 minutes. Originally, you had 30-second video clips, which I said certain music is going to go up there and going to be showcased and people are going to get to catch it. What's the chance that some of these music videos are going to have to change your aspect ratio and be formatted to be watched on TikTok on your phone so that you can watch this and go on with it and see what happens? And we know that for some people, it's retention. See, here's the thing. Time spent listening. We talked about that with radio, where there was always a better chance with radio if you'd listen 3, 4, 6 hours a day. And you were listening in the car on the way to work, on the way back, or listening at home, whatever. You were always listening to the radio. And now you don't have that so much. But that's because you had that engagement for so long for all the advertisers that get taken care of, for all these musicians and all the music that get taken care of as well. Because the songs, if they were new, would be heard a couple of times a day by a said radio listener. But that time spent listening, you're not even getting it on cable or streaming TV in some cases. But here's some information about TikTok that's very important. The possibility, the probability of getting your music heard or listened to in some way, shape, or form because of TikTok is because of the fact of how many people are watching TikTok right now. According to App Annie, by summer 2021, U.S. TikTok users are watching over 24 hours of content per month. YouTube users, 22 hours a month. Now, Data.ai, and reported by Bloomberg, they said that the average TikTok user in the U.S. now spends 28.7 hours a month. Almost an hour a day on TikTok. Watching TikTok. Almost an hour a day. How many 30, 60-second videos do you think people are watching in that hour? That's a lot. That means some people are going to be able to watch 40 to 60 videos, and the opportunity for if your music becomes viral and somebody on a platform, some way, somehow goes to the right portion of the algorithm and then somehow gets into everybody's FYP of the billion users that are on this platform in the first place, you're going to get a good chance to be noticed. Exposure. And then the discussion about how much that TikTok could be contributing right now. Goldman Sachs actually talking about that, how much emerging platforms, they called them, and how much they were probably paying the music industry in some way, shape, or form. So they estimated $1.38 billion in the U.S. That's how much Facebook, TikTok, and other paid the music industry in 2021. So social media in general, the music industry only got a little over $1 billion from them. So they might have gotten $4 billion in revenue last year, TikTok. But how much of that $4 million went to the music industry? $179 million, 13%. 13% of what they made went back to the music industry. The recording industry didn't make much off of it. The recording industry, they're kind of foolish right now. They're not working with radio anymore. They don't want to play with radio anymore. They're working with streaming, but they don't even know how to work that well either. And they're not doing the right thing by social media. Let's just be honest with everybody. That's just the way it is. And then Tim Ingham then goes on and says, why doesn't the industry just change its deal with TikTok? And one global music industry company did try to force TikTok into revenue share. Their message to TikTok was, quote, thanks very much for the money so far. Thanks for completely changing the music industry landscape and giving great opportunities to artists. But we'd like to share in your revenue now. And TikTok did mull over what the deal might look like until one of the three major music companies did a licensing deal with TikTok. That was just another mammoth buyout deal. And the rest of the industry at that point had to fall in line. And TikTok's defense, the music industry at large is still operating on buyout or blind check advanced deals with Twitch, as well as Facebook and Instagram. Now, TikTok's global head of music did speak to Music Business Worldwide, and Oli Oberman actually said this. And they said, quote, Oli Oberman said, quote, from the outset, we wanted to pay rights holders and we built a team to do that. We're proud of the deals we struck and how in a few short years we've been able to offer a new and growing revenue system to the industry, as well as becoming a powerful marketing and promotional platform for artists of all genres. We're delighted by the success artists, both new and old, have found using TikTok, connected with fans and kickstarting their careers. This success and the power of our platform is translated into record label and publishing contracts, the launch of careers, significant streaming uplift, and TikTok having a positive impact on charts worldwide. Yes, all that is true. And let's be honest here, the record labels, TikTok is doing a good job at recruiting new artists for them. They're taking some of the A&R work away from them. So when new artists get discovered, then all they got to do is just sign them into a deal. Because the heavy legwork has already been done by TikTok. Because of the platform and the accessibility of all these artists, where they're not going to travel to somebody and go through somebody else's mention about somebody being really good. That they already have this instant exposure. And then all of a sudden, now you got somebody that wants to just come on board and we could just get them on and say, okay, we don't have to go through an American Idol or The Voice to find talent. We can just find them on TikTok. And all of a sudden, here's their music. They might have watched them on a live. They might have watched a clip of them performing, whatever there might be. Which, by the way, Chavo mentioned in the interview a few weeks ago, and I said, and I really keep thinking about this over and over, is that with all those artists that are continuing to always interpolate music, like you see drummers or you'll see people that are just deciding to take some certain song and just recreate it so they can show that they can do it. He's encouraging more of those artists to create new content. You know, don't just play covers. Create new sounds. Like, you know how to play the music and you know, you can drum and you can use beat machines, and you can play guitar, and you can sing whatever, like all these other artists out there. So now take your craft and make new music, which is a great idea. And I wish there were more people that would just try to take the idea. Okay, yes, take the cover music. That kind of gets you across the board. I mean, think about it like this. Cat Burns, the UK artist. She has a song called Go that was very much top 5 song in the UK for about 10 weeks, I want to say. And she was doing covers on TikTok before she got noticed and recognized. And then she put out original music, and all of a sudden, boom, here we go. She's out there and being noticed. And that's how it works. That's a pretty good way to go. And Oldie Oberman also mentions how their TikTok is giving a significant streaming uplift for popular artists on TikTok, a clear reference to TikTok's argument that it powers consumption on Spotify and Apple Music, digital service providers. And because of what TikTok does as a gateway to get people to go to Spotify or Apple Music, that those platforms are paying a revenue share to the music industry. So why expect us to do that? Which is a great point. Plus, ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, already has a subscription service called Resso, which is not available in the U.S., but they do pay through a revenue share of subscription revenue to the music business. So maybe that platform gets released to the U.S., the U.K., Europe, so that the music industry can benefit from that platform, and the revenue share can be made on that way and keep TikTok away from that. But he also says that engagement with music, as engagement with music on TikTok evolves, our business model will also evolve. But all the music publishers, for the change to happen, these established, legacy, archaic music publishers, the likes of Universal, Sony, Warner Music Group, and Merlin, they have to stand firm and insist that they will only license their music to TikTok if it offers a revenue share. But they all have to come in on a consolidated front. Unified. I don't think that's going to happen. So for right now, TikTok has control. Radio used to have this control. Mind you, TikTok has the control. Radio let that control go, which is why I said back in 2021 that TikTok is now the place for music. Radio's not. TikTok is basically killing radio, much like everything else. And whose fault is it on radio? It's on radio itself. But now they have their own issues when it comes to where radio has to also do something to make themselves relevant because they need to start paying their fair share. That's the problem with them. Radio hasn't been paying their fair share for a long time, it sounds like. An interesting story from Inside Radio about the comedian Lewis Black. This story came across and I was really surprised by it. He has sued Pandora, which is owned by SiriusXM, saying he succeeded when others haven't. As he had a lawsuit that was filed in federal court this month in New York. A fight over copyright payments from the streamer may be no laughing matter for radio, but one attorney says that may pay the price for a new focus on spoken word royalties. So Lewis Black's lawsuit on Pandora accuses Pandora of offering its users access to 68 of his recordings, which the comedian says he's not been paid for. He's seeking publishing royalties in the amount of $10.2 million from Pandora, which Black says made 31 recordings available on Pandora's premium interactive streaming service. In the lawsuit, they say that, quote, in addition to the license, it also made no royalty payments for the works. And the end result is Pandora took the works, gained listeners, subscribers, and market share with full knowledge it did not have licenses and made no royalty payments for the works. And so attorney David Oxenford actually makes the point about this as well. He says that while the case would have a direct impact on other streaming services like Spotify and iHeartRadio, it could also impact radio stations because they have licensing agreements with the performance rights organizations like ASCAP, BMI, Global Music Rights, and CSAC, limited to composers of musical works. And the rights deals say nothing about spoken word recordings, which, by the way, for many years, there are various radio stations that might do like the 5 o'clock whistle. They might play a clip from a stand-up act from a comedian, or they might play a comedian stand-up act. Remember, there was a comedy channel not so long ago that was being pushed out there by iHeartRadio, I believe it was. And there have been other stations similar to this before. I believe Sirius XM does have to go and pay royalties for the comedy channel they have over there. Because it's just like any other records out there of a comedy record. You'd have to get royalties for that being put out as a published recording. And so Oxenford goes along and says that, while the analogy to music where there are two copyrights to record a song is tempting, and practice there seems to be many differences between comedy and music, but if there is found to be a separate copyright in the comedy routine, this would add one more liability not just to streaming services, but also to broadcasters or any other venue where comedy routines are played in public. So radio already is going through its own problems in the first place. Let's just make that point clear. But then radio already has its normal issues when it comes to the rights holders for radio, the ones that collect the royalties. Now we're having an issue where BMI, one of the major rights holders, is asking a court to rule on radio's effort to combine royalty rate setting into one proceeding. We talked about this a few weeks ago, on the show. So Broadcast Music Incorporated, BMI, is petitioning a federal court in New York to implement a stay on the radio industry's suit to combine the rate settings for both BMI and ASCAP into a single proceeding. So BMI is asking the court first to decide whether such a move is permitted. The Radio Music License Committee filed the suit last month against arguing the combination will deliver fair results. That BMI and ASCAP should have their own individual proceedings on how radio is going to pay for royalties. That's the point here. BMI pointed out that these two performance rights organizations have similar but not identical license fees with contract terms that are at times contradictory, and that the joint proceeding would create various issues related to confidentiality, create obstacles to negotiate a resolution. Yeah, radio wants to combine this all together so there's no competition or no overpowering of one place or the other, which is a pretty crappy way to do things. But this is where radio is trying to go ahead and find their way to spend as little as possible and keep themselves relevant. And there's other performance rights organizations out there, CSEC and Global Music we just mentioned, that are not part of this rate court arrangement. And BMI says the idea comes up short. Quote, even if it were appropriate to consider a single one-pie industry-wide rate, a joint proceeding could not do it. So there's an initial conference among the parties for July 25th, and the RMLC will have until July 18th to respond to the request to put the stay on the rate-setting proceeding in the meantime. Radio's licensing deal with ASCAP and BMI expired at the end of last year, but the RMLC has reached interim deals with performance rights organizations to allow stations to continue using music in their repertoires. So radio right now doesn't even have a set deal for licensing music because of the issues that radio is trying to go and delay this whole point because they don't want to pay more money because it's money they don't have. Remember, all these radio stations, for the most part, they're owned by corporations that are, that are being held by private equity groups who don't care about these companies to make money if they do. In some cases, they don't care because they're bankrupt. So if they're just kind of being vultures and just picking at the carcasses and taking away resources and just selling them off as necessary and just breaking down and just laying off people, which they've been doing once again. iHeartRadio did the same thing when they started laying off people like they do every year. The thing just continues to happen all the time. No answer to all this. Incredible. Okay, so there's a couple other stories I want to bring up before I wrap things up. Man, wow. I'm just starting running out of time. I'm like, I got almost 5 minutes left. Well, I got 7 minutes left right now. It's because I want to finish it up in an hour. But I only have a couple of things I want to have left that I want to go and take care of. So I'm going to hold a couple of stories off for next week. And one story from Neiman Lab, about a third of new subscribers to news publications canceled in the first 24 hours. So that means the paywalls aren't working. The big money going into this year's midterm elections, where radio gets that kind of piece of the pot, which is one thing that's interesting, that radio always relies on every election year. They don't care about what money is coming from. They just need the money, which is why they also want the cannabis money. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago too. So there's a couple other stories I want to just really go into before we wrap things up. One more Music Business Worldwide article I want to bring up here, where they talk about the major labels facing an uphill battle for streaming market share. How can they fight back? And I just wanted to get back to this here because he mentioned about Spotify and other digital service providers might have to pay out higher royalties for quality or premium artists, especially those who attract subscribers to the service, versus the tens of thousands of tracks uploaded to streaming services daily. So that was just one thing I wanted to bring up, but it's one of those things that everybody worries about. That with the amount of money being made, especially with legacy artists, and the amount of streams they're getting, amount of listens they're getting on Spotify or Pandora or Apple, and the kind of money being made off of those. We already know that a lot of musicians complain about how much money is being made off those streaming services in general, that they could always be making more. But anyway, that was a story from June, but I want to just bring that back up one more time. Now let's get into the story with radio and their fight with SiriusXM. So Radio Inc. put out a bunch of stories about this, so here's what's happening. SiriusXM now has a new campaign, Why Waste Your Time with AM/FM Radio? It was a marketing email that was sent out to customers taking a direct shot at radio. And Radio Inc. says, are you going to do anything about it or just take the punch to the head and let it go? And Radio Inc., they make the point and say, listen, SiriusXM shouldn't be allowed to just get away with telling consumers they are wasting their time with your radio stations. But is anyone on radio going to actually stand up and say, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore? Right? Where's the Howard Beals out there? We don't have those. But yes, there's a marketing campaign that was out there, and SiriusXM says, SiriusXM has so much more to enjoy than AM/FM radio. Can your regular radio do that? Well, SiriusXM decided to take a shot at radio, and radio did respond back somewhat. There's a couple of the radio industry articles out there, and some people in the radio industry that are talking this up and complaining about it. There being Howard Beals out there. The Radio Advertising Bureau says, quote, selling our products or services by putting the competition down is a marketing strategy that demonstrates a lack of strength in the product or service as a standalone. So they're just saying, don't worry about it. But when SiriusXM says, why waste your time with AM/FM? Many radio pros got upset about this. The Radio Advertising Bureau says that, quote, in the case of SiriusXM, when taking a look at their most recent earnings report, it's no wonder the strategy was to go after radio. That the Satcaster included, quote, no rationale for their leading question, end quote. But that's a cop-out. I mean, it still doesn't matter. Sure, SiriusXM took a low blow going after radio like it did, unprovoked. But now radio doesn't want to go ahead and fight back. They're just going to say, well, we're still better than everybody else. Yeah, the 94% of people listening every month to radio. All that kind of crap, all right? Or what is it now? 93% of adults 18 plus monthly. That kind of thing they always put out there, which is what they probably sell to every advertiser out there on radio to spend it for $1 a holler, okay? Fred Jacobs blogged about the SiriusXM attack amid suggestions that the industry create a task force tackling new competitive challenges and offering convention sessions that address such competitive salvos. And Jacobs may have hit on the ultimate rebuttal message to SiriusXM, why waste your money on satellite radio? Correct. If it's free, it's for me. That's what it comes down to. We're going to leave it there. I think there's nothing else I'm going to go ahead and touch upon for this episode. That's where we're just going to leave it right there and just say it all standalone. Thank you for listening to the show, for subscribing. Thank you, all of you from all different countries around the world that are listening to the show, whether it's India, the Philippines, the UK, wherever you're listening. I appreciate you all listening to the show, wherever you find this show. And how you listen to it, I'm grateful that you listen each and every week. Thank you as always. Come back next week for another Broadcasters podcast, and until then, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.